welcome back. It's week 3, and as you know, Essay 1 is due on Wednesday. So most of you have gotten comments from me, gotten some feedback on your rough drafts, and hopefully you're reading those and using those notes to move forward with Essay 1 and get the best possible draft that you can in by Wednesday. As always, let me know if you have any questions, email with me, do whatever you need to do to get the work done. With that in mind, because your essay is due on Wednesday, this is going to be a pretty short lecture, this first one, and it's going to deal with some suggestions and just some basic things that I think you need to be thinking about as you're moving from rough draft and my comments into final draft due Wednesday. So I'm going to cover the reading from the Norton Field Guide in this lecture, and it's good reading to do before you turn in your final draft of Essay 1, because it'll give you some good suggestions about how to finalize this draft. Then I'm going to give you some little tips based on what I saw in your rough drafts. Mainly what I saw was a lot of really good work, the beginnings of a lot of really good work that just needed to be fleshed out and made more specific, made more argumentative, and made more detailed. So those are the kinds of notes I gave most of you, and those are the kinds of things I'm going to address really quickly in this first video. So let's start by looking at the Norton Field Guide reading for this week and things that I want you to be thinking about and taking away from that as you move from rough draft into final draft of Essay 1. Alright, now that you all have gotten comments back from me on your rough draft, you should have a pretty clear idea of what I want you to do next as you're moving toward finishing these first essays. You can check out the rubric that's up on D2L for you to get a sense for how I'm going to be grading them, but you can also look at my comments, take my comments, see what I'm suggesting, and then really use the reading in this for this week in the Norton Field Guide to help figure out some steps that you can take as you move forward to finish these drafts. So chapter 46 is one of the really good chapters of the Norton Field Guide because it's all about synthesizing ideas, which is what we're going to be working on all semester, taking a whole lot of ideas, including your own and a whole lot of experts, and putting them together and making something important and interesting and new out of it. So pay very close special attention to chapter 46. You might want to dog-ear it or put a tab on it or something so you can always come back to it, because it gives you lots of important things to think about, lots of good questions to ask, particularly looking at patterns and making connections, which is a very important thing that we're going to be working on all semester. As well as using research to support your ideas and entering this critical conversation, right? So you've identified the critical conversation in your research, you've got kind of a working thesis about it now, you've answered a few of your research questions, and now you need to enter that conversation and tell us what you really think and why you really think it based on the sources that you found and your analysis of the text, right? So again, as always, let the research guide you. Right? It's going to enhance your ideas, it's going to help you be specific and comprehensive and increase your knowledge and vocabulary. Once as you're reading your sources, pay close attention to the things that they're identifying, the themes they're looking at, the keywords they're using, the points of analysis that they're using. Those are going to give you some good guides for how to do your own analysis, right? So as you're writing your paper, you can sort of mimic what others have done and build off of the knowledge that you are now acquiring. Okay, so that's chapter 46 is a great one. Chapter 47 is going to help you with quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing a little bit of which we talked about last week. As always, I mentioned last week, I really love the idea of the signal phrase, so be sure you're using some of those signal phrases. And then chapter 48 is all about plagiarism, so be sure you review your plagiarism stuff and don't plagiarize. Alright. Finally, a few tips on finishing your essays from the writing perspective. Work on being specific. Obviously, drafts are not as specific as they can be, and that's one of the really big differences between a rough draft and a final draft, is the specificity involved. So you've been working with these sources, and you've been working with your primary and secondary texts. You've been looking at these things, and you need to be sure that when you're writing about them, you're being very specific about what you're saying and how you're saying it. So all of your evidence, your data, your examples, primary and secondary sources need to be very specific in the way that you use them. Don't make vague claims or overgeneralized claims about these things. Don't tell me that since the beginning of time, critics have been debating about whether television was good or bad, right? Because that's just not true, and it's stupid, and it's a waste of my time and yours. So be specific in your claims as you're making them and making your arguments. This is, as my old high school English teacher used to tell me, avoid BS, right? You avoid BS by being specific. If you can't be specific, your argument is probably bullshit, and you should probably not write it, right? So if you can't say exactly what you want to say, then you need to think about whether that's really what you want to say, right? Being specific is something we have to always work on. I have to work on it in my writing, and you need to work on it in yours. Also focus on clarity, right? Again, I know that your rough drafts aren't necessarily always the most specific or clear things because they're rough drafts. But again, these are the two of the most important things that we need to work on moving from rough draft to final draft. Being specific in all of our claims and all of our sentences even, and being clear. Right? Always saying what you mean and meaning what you say. So the best tip I can give you about that is reading your paper aloud and really listening to your words, right? It's one thing to read your paper out loud and just read it, but you need to really listen to those words as they come out of your mouth, right? Do they make sense? Do they really say what you want them to say? Be very, very careful in your writing as you revise and polish between rough draft and final draft. So these are just the two of the most important things to think of in that process and between rough draft and final draft is being specific and always being very clear. So there you have it. There's some general tips for dealing with revising and making a finalized draft of Essay 1. Of course, I put finishing in quotation marks on those slides because I don't really think any essay is ever finished. I've been working on an essay now for the last year and a half, and I think I'm on draft 8 of it. I'll never be finished with it. We never want to think of these things as finished. They're always in process. They're always becoming. But the draft you're going to turn in is the one I'm going to grade, so we'll call it the final draft for now. Hopefully those are some good tips for you. Hopefully that helps clarify some of the things that I was talking about on some of your rough drafts. Again, really just work on being specific, on not making generalizations, on giving me lots of good details. Even if I have seen the show or the TV or the movie that you're writing about, it doesn't mean that you can just assume that I know what scene you're talking about, right? Give me good specific details that really support an argument that you want to make about this text. So I'm going to leave you for now with this video and get to work on revising your essays and getting them turned into me by Wednesday. The next video is all about topic selection and the final research project that we're going to be beginning work on once you turn in Essay 1, Essays 2 through 4. So if you want to pause and not watch that until after you're done with Essay 1, I completely understand. In fact, I might recommend that. Why don't you go ahead and right now and just get to work on Essay 1. Make sure that you understand my comments, you're in touch with me, sending me an email if you have a question about something I've said, and really getting the best draft that you possibly can to me by Wednesday. Do your Norton Field Guide reading, pay attention to those things that I mentioned in this lecture, and really work on that draft. And then once you feel comfortable with that, go on to the next video lecture, which is a bit longer, and it's introducing Essays 2 through 4 and the final research project. So I'll leave you to it. Get your essays to me. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video lecture.